Hello and welcome to the Drexel interview. I'm your host, Paula Marantz Cohen, speaking to you from my office as Dean of the Pennoni Honors College at Drexel University in Philadelphia. Today my guest is Roz Chast, an acclaimed and longtime cartoonist for the New Yorker magazine. Ms. Chast is the author of many graphic novels and compilations of her work, including the 2014 bestseller, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, which was a finalist for the National Book Award, and her recent Going Into Town, a love letter to New York. In our first interview, we talked about Roz Chast's cartooning career. In this one, we'll talk about her two recent graphic memoirs. Roz Chast, welcome back to the Drexel interview.
Thanks.
So, the 2014 graphic memoir, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, made a deep impression on me and many of my friends because you address the subject of parents getting old, declining in health, dying, and made it both moving and funny. The whole process of, you painstakingly moved through these processes of ailing parents, assisted living, dementia, hospice, death of one spouse, and then the survival of the other and the eventual death of your mother who was left, as well as the resistance and the argumentativeness of the parents in the face of these things. So how did it feel to relive this arduous process in writing this book? In a sense, you had to really go over it again, and I imagine, you made it funny as well as moving, but I imagine there were moments when it was difficult.
I don't know. It's really funny. I think for me, when I'm working on a project, I get really involved with it as a project. Maybe it's a little more detachment. And so, I'm not sitting there writing it and weeping. I think that a lot of my emotions I went through at the time. There were things that I went through when I was living through it that were pretty bad, but when I was writing it, I was more concerned with telling the story and trying to do it as best as I could.
I understand that because, I wonder if when you're living through it, do you have any of the feeling of the humor and the detachment because you're going to write about it as you're going through it?
I didn't know I was going to write about it.
You didn't know it?
No. I might have, by the end, started to think about it, but there were definitely not in any kind of coherent way. My father died in 2007. My mother died in 2009. The book came out in 2014. So there were a few years there of just kind of floundering around with it and not really knowing what kind of book it was going to be.
It's interesting, though, because since you are the, how shall I put it, you write about anxiety so well, and it's as though you found your ultimate subject. The ultimate subject, and I wonder, so it's interesting that you didn't know at the time that it would be something you would write about. But is that, do you think you unconsciously knew, or do you feel that all of your life is ultimately grist?
I do feel like everything in some ways is material.
Everything is material. Nora Ephron said that.
Yeah,
everything
or her mother
copy.
said that.
Yeah, her mother.
Everything is copy.
Yeah.
And I do feel that way. I've always felt that way, and I've told my kids that.
It gives you a certain power and control, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's just what comes more naturally to me.
So I want to look at, there's so much that's wonderful in this book, but I thought this picture of the decline, what is it you say? Things were going downhill, but for many years the decline was blessedly gradual.
Yeah.
And you use the couch. That's one of your motifs.
Yes,
but they're on a slope. Many of the things you write about are quite literal, but here this is such a wonderful metaphor of people skiing on a couch, down a slope, and then this one going down over here. So I just think it's a funny image. of a very
It's a bunny
graphic.
slope.
Yeah.
You
And
gotta,
it's kind of nice here. At this point, it's not so
yeah,
bad.
no, it's not so bad. I mean, we're on it.
Yeah.
You know, we're all on it.
We're all on this slope.
Yeah, we're all on this slope.
And at this point, we feel that it's not so bad.
No.
But then
no.
it gets bad.
No, it gets bad. It definitely gets bad.
And so you describe your role as you go back and forth between Connecticut and Brooklyn, where your parents are still living, where you grew up.
Yeah, it started to get a little crazy.
And I just hear again one of your circle thoughts.
The circular thoughts, yeah.
And I really identify with this. I think a lot of people do, where you, and I love the way you draw yourself, where you're thinking about the fact you feel so bad about going back to Connecticut where your family is, but you have to leave your parents in this apartment, which has now, they've lost control of being able to take care of it.
Yes.
And themselves.
Yeah.
It's a grime. You say grime everywhere.
The grime was the least of it. I mean, I was just afraid of like physical injury, you know, the usual thing. I mean, I've heard this now, versions of this from so many different people. Yes, they have the life alert. No, they don't want to push it because then they go to the hospital.
So what was the point of wearing it?
What was the point of it?
But here, I mean, what you say, besides my family's back home in Connecticut, they need me there.
Yeah, my kids were still
Mom
home.
said I should leave. Why should she lie? I have no choice. I have to go. I'm sure they'll be fine. And then this last one, I can't stay there. Stay here. I hate it there.
Yeah.
Here with her. I mean, that's
I
really
hated
you're
it.
getting at it. You're feeling miserable.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that contradictory state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a complicated relationship with my parents, you know.
But who doesn't?
But who doesn't? Well, you know, I mean, there's better and there's worse. I mean, everybody's relationship is complicated, but it was, you know, it was not something I never wanted to stay 1 minute more than I had to. Let's put it that way.
Well, I love the picture here of you with your parents.
Yeah.
And you have the thought bubble, just a few more years and I am out of here.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I looked through
At
photo
age,
albums.
what is this?
I was 12.
12.
Yeah.
You thought that
Oh,
then?
yeah. I mean, I couldn't wait. I could not wait to get out.
And then to be pulled back under these horrific circumstances.
Yeah. And I think that's the sort of like grim humor of it, you know, that like you think you are out of the woods, but guess what? You're not, you know.
Yeah. And then the guilt you felt.
Oh,
which
of course. Well, I
permeates
hadn't
this book.
visited my parents. My parents had come up to visit me when I moved to Connecticut, but I hadn't gone to Brooklyn to see them for 11 years. That's kind of weird. But somehow those years just went by. My kids were very little, and there were always reasons. You know, it was too hard to bring both of them in the car. My husband didn't always want to drive into Brooklyn. I couldn't drive into Brooklyn. I didn't learn how to drive till I was 38. I drove into Brooklyn once, and I thought, you know, I will never do that again, never.
And then then you had to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you finally get to a point where your parents have to go into assisted living, which you call the place.
The place.
The place, because that's how they refer to it, I suppose. Or
No, I refer to it as
the place.
The place. When I would write to my friends, I would talk about it as the place.
And talking about getting things out of your parents' apartment, which again, another thing that I think people can identify with.
Yeah.
And here you intersperse your cartooning with photographs.
Yeah.
And this picture of your father's glasses.
Yeah, I think those were actually my mother's.
were they your mother's?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, your mother's
Yeah, those are my
glasses.
father's shavers. I mean, why did he never throw away the broken shavers?
Right.
You know, it was like it was the museum of old chic shavers. It was
Right.
like, you know, these are like, I don't know how much you paid, $15. They're not like, you know, expensive, you know, shavers from, I don't even know, Hermes or something. They're just like chic drugstore shavers.
And look at this one has some
It
masking
has,
tape
oh, they're
around
all,
it.
everything.
And look at the stapler.
The stapler. I know, it's from like it's from the 18th century or something. It's just, I
And
don't.
then this is my favorite, I think. Why was there a drawer of jar lids?
I have no idea.
And yet all this was saved.
All of this was saved. All of this was saved. They could not throw stuff away. But this I've heard from also many other people whose parents grew up in the Depression. You know, I mean, they didn't actually grow up in the Depression. They were born before that. They graduated from college into the Depression. But both of them grew up poor. They were first-generation Americans. All of their parents, all my grandparents were born in Russia, and they all came over with nothing.
Yeah.
You know, they worked very, very hard, and you didn't throw away jar lids. They were made of metal. You know, you didn't throw away Band-Aid boxes. They were made of metal. You could use them for something.
Also, I was struck at the end of the book, you have a series of drawings of your mother in bed.
There was a period of a few months where she was not talking. There's the very last drawing, and that's the one where she died.
I see.
She went into hospice in June, at the end of June, I think. And they thought that she was, you know, she wasn't really eating very much. She wasn't drinking. She had a kind of low-grade fever. She was 97.
She was 97.
so-
We forgot to mention
yeah,
that both
she-
your parents were in their 90s.
Yes,
when
my
they
father
died.
was 95 when he passed away. My mother was 97. And those last few months, the hospice people actually told me we've never seen anything like this, because she would like sometimes wake up, and she had a 24-hour care at that point. And that was another thing that I learned, that with assisted living places, they top out. You know, you sign up for different tiers of care, at least at this place. So, you know, it starts out where you pay a certain amount per month, and then you get 6 hours or whatever it was of care included in that fee. So like every person gets about an hour a day of personal care, like maybe getting dressed or taking a shower or whatever. Then there's another level of maybe if you need more, and then your fee goes up by that much. And then there's another tier. And then after that, you top out and you have to hire private care, which is not paid for by anything.
And money is an ongoing motif.
Oh,
Being concerned that money will run out.
Oh my God! By the end, it was just like a Niagara Falls. I mean, it was hilarious. It was almost like a black comedy, because my parents were such scrimpers. They were like, I still can hear my father asking me, you know, so how much are they charging for fig Newtons in your area? And it's like, I don't know, Dad. You know, they're not $55 a box. You know, they're like $3.29 or $3.79 or $2.99. I don't know. But you know, they were very careful about all of this because they grew up so poor.
And here the money was hemorrhaging.
Just, you know, and of course these places, they know that they've got you. That what are you going to do? Say, why, this fee is exorbitant. I'm going to take my mother out and put her on the street. That's exactly what I'm going to do. No, of course, you're going to keep her in there. But I was worried that she would run out of money. And then I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, that like then would we go into our money because I have 2 kids that are about to go to college? And do we take a second mortgage on the house? And my mother's 97 and she's barely alive. But it's, you know, this insane amount of money per month. Just
You articulated this so well. I mean, I felt that almost, you know, this book should be required reading. You know, AARP and all that stuff that they send out. Your book should be read as a way to prepare or think about some of these issues at an age when one can start thinking about them. Has that been said?
Oh, you know, I think that there's a lot of this sort of talk that we've got to do something that's a better system than this. I mean, it drives me bananas to hear people talking about, like, this population, the average age is 110. Let us study them to see what they do to live this. And I'm thinking, clearly, you don't worry about who's taking care of all these old people. And it's going to be women, and it's probably going to be women of color, and it's going to be daughters. And you don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
You've never been in this spot, you know,
Yeah.
with the extremely, extremely old. It's just...
Well, the book is graphically about that, and yet it's also funny. I mean, I laughed out loud.
Oh, there were some very funny
Very
things.
funny.
You know, my father with a red sweater, and like he wouldn't wear
Your
it.
father in general.
Oh,
and
my
yet,
father, yeah,
What
he
a
was
lovable,
wonderful. Oh, he was a
lovable
great
man.
guy. They were
Yeah.
both very...
Well, your mother,
Yeah, she
more
was very tough.
problematic.
Yeah,
yeah.
but he was... I think about him. I think about both of them all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, every day, several
I
times.
understand that. Well, let's move to some more cheerful topic.
Yes.
Which is your recent book, Going Into Town, A Love Letter to New York.
Yes.
You are a quintessential New York voice. You grew up in Brooklyn, as a Flatbush section of Brooklyn, but your love of Manhattan is what's expressed in this book. And yet, your parents were sort of afraid of the city.
I think they were.
And
Yeah.
so do you feel your love of the city was a kind of rebellion, or was a resistance to them in some way?
I think in some weird way, it didn't even have that much to do with them.
Really?
I think it was just like, I'm happy here. And, or happier than any other place I've ever been. And I remember that from my very first apartment, just feeling like, this is a different feeling. This is different.
Well, you give reasons for why you love New York in the book. I mean, I love this because you talk about the more nondescript your street is, the greater chance you are of making your own discovery. And here's a double page of this store sells 90 jabillion kinds of ribbon. That's so New York.
It's
right?
so great. It's so great. That makes me so happy when I go into a store like that.
Even though you might not need ribbon.
And I don't want ribbon.
Yeah.
I don't even, I mean, it doesn't mean that I have to buy it. I just like looking at it.
That it's there.
That it's there, you know?
Then...
Or this like kind of trim where there's like these tiny little lanterns on the trim, and you think, I love this. I have no idea what you would do with it. You know, would I put it like little lanterns on the bottom of my skirt? No. Would I put it around a lampshade? No.
But somebody would.
But somebody will. Somebody conceived this kind of ribbon that has tiny lanterns hanging every 6 inches from it. And they're little, and it's just great. It's just great.
I agree with you. I love that sense of serendipity that you have in the city. You also have a whole section on museums and the best museums that you find in the city. The Metropolitan, and you annotate some pictures, including the armor area, which I love.
Yeah, I love the armor.
And then you talk about parks.
Yeah.
Which you love. And then I love this section about Manhattan wildlife.
Yes.
Mice, rats, giant rats.
Giant rats,
albino alligators in sewers.
Yes.
Then apartment cats, which are more benign. But then when I turned the page, of course, I was looking for the cockroaches.
Yeah.
And here were the cockroaches, although this is a water bug.
That's a water bug.
Yes.
And cockroaches and water bugs are not related.
They're not related.
No, they're not related. They
similar.
look very similar, but they're not related. And another name, I learned this from Terry Gross, another name for a water bug, toe biter.
Really? Do they bite toes?
Evidently, yeah.
Oh.
Isn't that bad?
That's bad.
Yeah.
And they are very ugly.
They're really ugly, and they're too big to step on, and I don't like that in a bug.
And cockroaches, I mean, the thing about New York and cockroaches, you know, they're all there, and you turn on the light, and usually I would avert my eyes until they had disappeared.
You look like this. Yeah, all right. Yeah,
they're so ugly.
Yeah, they're bad.
And then you have a section on apartments. And of course, in New York, apartment hunting is a sport.
It's a sport. But you know what? I really do feel that the real estate section, the Times real estate section, makes it seem more dire than it is.
Is that so?
I believe that. I mean, I also, with Brooklyn opening up, you know, a lot of young people want to live in Brooklyn.
And Queens, too. Now.
And Queens, too, yes. Yeah. Astoria is, you know, so, you know, supply and demand. I mean, the supply is greater than it was. I'm talking for rentals.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And as long as
you're optimistic about this.
I'm more optimistic than I think a lot of people. And this really has to do with when my son a couple of years ago was looking for apartments, I thought, well, we first looked in Brooklyn, and it was just so expensive, and it really did seem like, you know, bad, because everybody and his brother, since Brooklyn, certain areas are so hot right now, everybody and his brother or sister is now a landlord. And we were sent to look at places that were just garbage and like 10 minutes from the subway. And they were high rents. They were like as high as Manhattan.
Yeah.
And eventually he came back to the Upper West Side, and we found a great place. And
for him alone?
For him alone.
Really?
But now he lives with his girlfriends.
Okay. Well, here I like this cartoon, no stove, teensy sixth floor walk up, above a funeral parlor.
Yeah, you make compromises.
All the way over on York Avenue, and you have York Avenue equals extremely far eastern Manhattan, practically in Europe.
It is. You don't want to live on York Avenue.
4 roommates.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of what people find.
My first apartment did not have a stove. I cooked on a hot plate. you know.
Mine was a fifth floor walk-up, which
Yeah,
when you're
so
20 years,
it doesn't
25
matter.
is not bad.
It doesn't
but
matter. I cooked on a hot plate. I figured it out. You know, you have one pot for the pasta, one pot for the sauce, and then you make a salad. And you can have a dinner party, and by the
And
time
that's
the
all you
water
could have
comes...
to eat,
Yeah, that's all
really.
you have to eat is pasta with sauce and a salad. And by the time the water comes to a boil, the second time when you put the spaghetti in, everybody is so drunk, it doesn't matter what you're serving. It's like, let's open an extra bottle of wine. We don't really care. It's going to be another half an hour before that water boils.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then, but now then at the end, you talk about the change to, you know, you really are nostalgic for the grittier New York.
I'm not.
Well, you say you're not, yes, but you don't like the fancier.
I don't like fancy.
And you have here the stupid $30,000 purse store.
Don't like that.
Yeah, but there are quite a number of them.
I know, but it's not all like that. There's still those ribbon stores.
Yeah,
There's
the ribbon
still a lot
stores.
of grit.
The button stores.
The button stores. There's
Yeah.
still a lot of like wonderful stores. It's not all, and the thing that's nice about New York is that it's all very sort of checkerboardy. Like I love when like a new disgusting condo goes up and it's, you know, and I know they're like starting at $2 million, have the apartment of your dreams. And, you know, it's just these horrible glossy ads. And then like right next door is the most disgusting like Duane Reade you've ever seen. And that like gives me like complete pleasure. I just love that.
But how long is that Duane Reade?
It's going to be there a lot.
Duane Reade going to stay
It's going to be there. That's the way New York is. It's very checkerboardy. I mean, yes, there are areas like Madison Avenue that are, you know, Gold Coasty and kind of like the little borderline.
Those portions of Williamsburg now have become entirely fancy.
Yeah, I know. I don't like
And that is really, I mean, you do see the $30,000 purses
I
there.
know, I
Where
know.
my father used to live, where there was no hot water.
Yeah,
when he
I
grew
know.
up.
I know. That's just
Amazing.
barfy and bad. But, you know.
The book has been out only a short time,
Yes.
but I imagine that you've gotten already lots of responses to it.
Yeah.
Can you
yeah.
tell us about some of the responses people have had? I mean, people love New York, or people hate New York. But I imagine people who write to you love New York.
Yeah. I think it's about New York because for me New York is my city, but I think it's also about people who like cities.
Yeah.
And I say in the book that one thing about cities that I love, about New York that I love, is the density of visual information. And maybe it's because I grew up in a city, and so that's what I'm more used to. It's like being out in a place where there's just nothing and just open space and there's nothing to look at actually makes me anxious, and I don't like it.
Yet you live in Connecticut.
We do, but we live in town.
Okay.
And my husband always laughs when we're traveling and it's like dark and there's just trees around and just like a bunch of nothing and it's kind of dark. And I'll just say, it's just really dark here. It's just weird. It's so dark. And he goes, yeah, it's night, you know? So, but
in a city, it's never
it's
dark.
never really dark like that. But I don't know, maybe because I don't know the names of trees or something. There's just not enough distraction. And in New York, I'm always distracted by something. I'll see like some weird food cart or somebody walking by me and, you know, they're like having a fight with somebody on their cell phone or, you know, I saw this guy in this, oh God, he was wearing this bathing suit that was really weird.
On the
It was like,
street?
yes,
Yeah.
it was like oh my God, it was last summer and it was like a little girl's bathing suit.
And where was this?
It was in the Village, of
Okay,
course.
yeah.
And it was like, you know, like a tank suit that like a 9-year-old would wear.
You mean with the...
Yeah, like a kind of like this, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like picture like a kind of smallish man wearing like a 9-year-old girl's tank suit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he was wearing, and he was very hairy, and it was just like it was very much of a look that you kind of want to look at for a while.
And yet people never act that surprised.
No, you can't act surprised, but it's like, thank you for doing that because I'll never forget you, Mr. Bathing Suit Man.
Thank you for giving us that image on
Yes.
which to end this
Yes.
interview because it is very vivid and very New York.
Yes, very New York.
And it makes me want to go there right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Philadelphia's a great city, but New York has a kind of variety and a
Yes.
kind of quirkiness that you find nowhere else.
Well, it's also very packed in. It's dense
yeah,
because it's an island.
it is an island and it's wonderful. And I really want to thank you.
Well, thank you for
I
having
hope
me.
our readers will run out and get this book because I think it will make them then want to go to New York and experience the wonderful city that we love.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us at the Drexel interview.